Hello everybody, my name is Jane Christian and I head up the Systems Intelligence team at Mediacom. I'm really excited to be sharing with you today an upgraded version of the demand generator application, which we originally developed with ThinkBox as the ultimate output of their demand generation research back in November of last year. You can find it on the ThinkBox website and it helps advertisers to identify the optimal media mix for their brands. And before I go into the application itself and show you the great new functionality, I'll hand over to Oliver Robertson from ThinkBox to say a few words.
Thank you, Jane. So we at ThinkBox are really delighted to be launching this second version of the demand generator, which, as Jane said, we originally launched at the back of last year. Now, when we launched it, reception was really positive, and since then the tool has been used over 6,000 times on our website by agencies and advertisers. However, in the development of the first version and from feedback that we've received since the original launch, we realised that there were some important developments that could be made to make the optimizer more flexible, provide greater granularity of data in the output, and hopefully make it more usable. So in the last few months, Jane and her team have been working tirelessly to make those changes, and we're really pleased to be able to take you through the all that new functionality today. Before Jane shows you the new tool, I think it's worth mentioning that the results that feed the demand generator are pre the COVID crisis. But it's more important than ever that advertisers make sure they're spending their budgets in the right areas. So it's important to say that there will be some adjustments that need to be made on top of this, on top of the results, to layer over them to reflect the realities of the market and what's been happening in the last few months. But Jane will explain this further as she takes you through the new version.
So here is the demand generator, which, as I said, you can find on the ThinkBox website quite easily. Now, in order to get the optimal media mix outputted for your brand, you'll need to a few questions down the left hand side here, and this is to really tailor it, and all of these different questions that it asks you are the key things that determine what that optimal media mix is for your brand. So I'm going to do an example scenario. I'm going to pretend that I'm a finance brand. I'm of mass market appeal. I'm not a niche brand. I'll have to input the percentage of my sales that are online. Let's choose, let's say I'm about 40%. Put in the size of the brand, let's say it's 200 million annual sales, and also the annual media budget, and let's put in £10 million there to allocate. And then you need to choose whether you want the output to tell you what revenue or profit will be output. I'm going to put in revenue, but you can get it to output profit as well. You'll just need to put in your profit margin in there. And then you need to choose whether you want to minimize risk or not. And this means if you minimize risk, it will choose the channels that have the most guaranteed outcome. So I'm going to choose that. And here is your scenario. So this is your optimal media mix here of £10 million spent for that finance brand. So you'll see how quickly that worked for you. Now here, let's spend a minute or so here, because this is one of the areas where we've made, I think, the biggest improvements in functionality. So the original demand generator would split your 10 million budget across the 10 channels shown here that were all of the channels that we could get a good read of effectiveness on in the demand generation research. But the feedback we had from advertisers was that in reality, they wouldn't always be using all 10 channels at the same time. It might be because they didn't have copy for all channels, or maybe there were just some that they wouldn't want to use. So now we can deselect channels by clicking on any of these boxes here. So I might want to get rid of, I'm just going to pick some at random here just to take out, but you can see it reallocates across the channels. Now, this functionality might be quite useful at the moment. So, for example, in Q2 of this year, if we were doing a scenario, we would have deselected cinema because it wasn't an active channel. But you can use this now to select channels that you don't want to be using if there are some. And also, there's a layer of pragmatism we need to add over this. So, for example, we need to be aware that is the demand in your market as high as it normally is at the moment, because things like generic search are very demand led, and if there's not as many people in the market, then it might not be possible to spend this much budget. To some of the improvements in the tool, I'm going to draw your attention to the top right hand side here to the business results. So we've always had a forecast of revenue and revenue ROI that came out of the tool. And it was always a 3-year forecast that it provided, but we had some feedback that it would be good to be able to give some more granularity. Now the results are broken down into 2. So you get the campaign uplift revenue and the campaign uplift ROI. And this is the revenue and the ROI that's generated while the campaign is on air, and also up to maybe 2 or 3 months after the campaign has run. Whereas the base growth is the longer term effect of that campaign over up to a 3-year period. So now you've got that additional breakdown, which I think is really valuable. The third area for improvements is this area at the bottom here that allows us to do a multi-year scenario and also see when the results, when that revenue is going to be delivered. So firstly, now you can choose to do a scenario over up to 3 years. So we can just activate a scenario in year 2 and year 3. And by default, it's adding £10 million in both of those years, just because that was the original result. But you could go in here and change the level of spend in future years, and it will run that scenario there. You can see here in the box at the top that it's added in all of the results and the business outcomes for those years there. And we've also improved the visualization to make it a bit clearer at the bottom now about when the revenue will be delivered from a particular campaign. So everything on here referring to year 1 is in blue. And in year 1, you can see the darker blue here is the campaign uplift. So this is the uplift while the campaign is on air and just afterwards. Whereas that longer term base growth, you can see when it materializes, and that's over 3 years here. So the total revenue generated in year 1 is everything that's in blue here. And it's the same for year 2. So here is the campaign uplift. And here is the longer term effect, that campaign, base growth over those 3 years, and so on. I think that's really useful for advertisers to know when they're spending now, when that revenue will actually be delivered. And the final improvement is this bottom left area here. If I click here, you can now access not only a downloadable PDF, which replicates the screen that you're seeing now, and you can paste that into PowerPoint, but it also now will give you a CSV file. So for those of you that want to access the data, for example, in Excel and start crunching your further numbers on this, you can get your hands directly on the data. So that's a whistle-stop tour of the new functionality in the demand generator. I'll hand back to Ollie to sum up for us.
So the demand generator is available completely free of charge on the ThinkBox website in the research section. So go ahead, try it out for yourselves. If you've got any questions, obviously approach Jane and her team or come and speak to us at ThinkBox, and we hope you enjoy it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.